Welcome to another episode of the CPG Guys podcast. Our co-hosts, Sri Rajagopalan and Peter V.S. Bond, explore how brands and retailers engage with consumers online, in-store, and everywhere in between. And now, here are Sri and Peter. Welcome again to the CPG Guys podcast. I'm PVSB, half of the dynamic duo known as the CPG Guys. I'm also the Senior Vice President of Commercial Strategy and Field Sales at Fetch Rewards, the mobile loyalty platform. I'm particularly intrigued by loyalty and the applications of first-party consumption data in CPG retail. My co-host, the other CPG Guy, is an expert in omni-channel commerce, and he's particularly fascinated by retail media and digital marketing. Coming to us from the left coast is my dear friend Sri. Sri, how are you, man?
How bad can it be, Peter? The Yankees have won 4 in a row yet again, so feeling good about that. But today's episode is extra exciting. Do you know why, Peter?
I have no idea.
It's only the second time in 240 episodes or so we've had someone from academia, which means today you and I can do what we love to do, which is we can really get into everything from analytics all the way to a true analysis objectively about the industry with no emotions. So I can't wait.
Does this mean I have to overlay some pomp and circumstance music as we're playing this episode, Sri?
It means all we got to do is we got to cover up your likeness here and only listen to your voice.
Oh, okay. Well, there we go. Thank you, Sri. And before we get to our guest today, a couple things. All our content, go to cpgguys.com. It's all free. Other than the merch, you want some merch, you got to pay for it, but everything else is free. And also follow us on LinkedIn. Come on, are you not following us on LinkedIn? Open up your app, search for CPG Guys, click the blue follow button, and while you're on LinkedIn, we also administer 2 closed groups. One is called Retail Media Professionals, and the other one is called CPG E-Commerce. Look for both of those, join. We'll approve you to get in, and then you'll be in a closed community where we have like-minded conversations about retail media and CPG e-commerce. Pretty straightforward. We've got about 1,000 members collectively between the 2 groups. It's a group you want to belong to if you're in that space. We're also on other social media platforms. Of course, Twitter and Facebook, but now we're on Instagram and TikTok. So check out our series of knowledge drops, which is intended to be a fun way to learn about the industry we're in. And remember to check out our other sister podcast, the FMCG Guys, over in Europe with Daniel and Efrain. They take our format and talk to industry luminaries from the EU. And our new sister podcast, CPG Scoop, with Jennifer and Risa. They conduct snackable conversations with industry veterans. It's a fun way to discover what's new and next in CPG commerce and marketing. So visit cpgscoop.com for them, and for FMCG Guys, it's fmcgguys.com. And of course, we're proud to partner with Next Up, formerly known as Network of Executive Women, whose mission it is to advance all women in business and to promote the cause of gender equality and career development. You want to learn more about them? Go to nextupisnow.org/CPG Guys. Don't worry, it's in the digital liner notes of this episode, and you can learn more about this great group. All right, so today we are pleased to have, as Sri had previously mentioned, a learned guest who is arguably a subject matter expert in several fields. So we're going to avail ourselves of his expertise as we dig into 2 areas of particular audience to us, and we think you as well. The first is around private label. Now, the dramatic rise in prices over the last year has driven many consumers to adopt for the first time or expand consumption of private label products. Our guest spent 13 years working at Damon Worldwide, a notable solution provider that influences all aspects of private brand development, from strategy to execution to consumer engagement, partnering with many retailers where all of us shop. He also spent 2 years in e-commerce at what was then Jet and ultimately transformed into the parent Walmart. That's the first topic. Now, the second area of expertise is around organizational education. He's now a faculty member at Cornell University Graduate School of Management, where he teaches retail strategy, marketing, and supply chain, and he focuses on building executive education programs in partnership with retailers, manufacturers, and other companies who are interested in ensuring their leaders are enabled to succeed in the transforming omnichannel world of commerce. It was at just such a program that a couple months ago I had the very good fortune to meet our guest earlier this summer. So please join Sri and me in welcoming to the CPG Guys podcast, Dan Hooker. Dan, hey, how you doing? What's going on?
Hey guys, how are you? It's a pleasure to see you today. Sri, I hope we get number 5 out there in California for our Yankees. And Peter, today PB is going to refer to private brands, not Peter Bond. So look forward to talking.
Wait, another Yankee fan? No. This can't be the case, Dan. You're from Orange County. How are you not a Dodger fan?
I know. I've been on the East Coast too long, and the Yanks have really adopted me, or I've adopted them as my team.
This podcast cannot continue, Peter, until I say, all rise, the judge is here.
Thank you, folks. That'll be it for this episode of the CPG Guys podcast. We're going to draw it to a close. No, I'm just kidding. I'm a little disappointed, Dan, but we'll give you the benefit of the doubt for now. I think I can bring you back to Dodgerland after they defeat the Yankees in the World Series this year, but that's another story. So I met Dan earlier this summer when I was in New York City at the Cornell Tech Center on Roosevelt Island. He was leading a week-long program that had been developed in conjunction with quite a number of companies, and it was called Omnichannel Leadership. And I found it very fascinating. I attended and got to know Dan very well. We spent a lot of time talking. I probably talked way too much, comparatively speaking, for anyone else in the audience. I think, Sri, it was pretty, you can imagine me, I was like a kid in a candy store. I was asking everybody every question I could. But it was there that I really had a chance to meet him. You know, Dan, before we get to the questions that we've prepared for you, I'd love for you to provide our audience with an overview of what your current role is, and particularly on creating these programs.
All right, that sounds great, Peter. And Sri, had you been there, I had to compete with Peter with his posts on LinkedIn with Whitney Cooper from Walmart and Kevin Holt from Ahold, plus the executives from the other companies were there. But I did have some time to spend with them and really got to know Peter and learn about Fetch Rewards and his business as well. I've been blessed in my career. I spent, 29 years out in retail doing everything from product ideation all the way to retail execution and every job in between. And I always stayed in contact with the professors here at Cornell, where I graduated a long, long time ago. And every year I would meet with Ed McLaughlin, who was the dean of the Dyson School, at the FMI annual show. And we'd get together for lunch and talk about the industry. And it just so happens that 3 people at Cornell were retiring. They reached out to me and said, hey, Dan, we need someone who can come and talk to students, teach undergraduate students, and run these industry programs. You seem like you have some experience in both. Would you be interested in doing that? So, sometimes in life, timing's everything. And I ended up here in 2019. And here at Cornell, I teach food marketing. I teach supply chain strategy. I have a marketing class in the Johnson Graduate School. And then the other part of my job is, like Peter mentioned, is to run these executive programs. We've had some legacy programs, and our most well-known one is the Food Executive Program that's been running for 57 years now. But that's one of the programs that I now run. And then we do programs with companies and trade organizations. And then the Omnichannel program where we met was a program that we put together with our industry partners. So it's been a great experience and a great transition from, Sri and Peter, you've had lots of different roles in the industry, as have I, and this is just a great way to, I'm not going to say end my career, but at this point in my career, to be here in the world of Cornell. I get to stay involved in academia as well as keep my finger on the pulse of the industry.
We'll refer to it as a capstone of your career rather than an end point. But in any event, that's very helpful, and we'll talk a little bit more about that component of what you're doing now. To the audience, I'm going to have links to Dan's LinkedIn profile and also the LinkedIn profile of the Cornell University retail program that he's a part of and has mentioned. So don't bother writing anything down. Open up your app. You're listening to it on your mobile phone right now, at least 90+% of you. So just go to the digital liner notes and click the hyperlink and you can learn more about it. So when we get to the conversation, the first half, as I mentioned, we'll talk around private label, and the second half will be executive education. So I'm going to kick it off with some foundational information. Dan, from your perspective, why do retailers market private label products? I mean, there are all these big national brands. What is the value proposition both to the consumer who buys it, but also to the retailer who's actually marketing it?
Let me take this question. It's pretty straightforward. First and foremost is the value proposition. Consumers want to have lower cost options for their spending their food dollar or their consumables goods dollar or from their wallet in any way. So first and foremost is the value proposition. Private label offers a lower cost alternative to the major national brands that are on the shelf, especially in these inflationary times. If we take a walk back a little bit to the 1970s when we had high inflation, private brands, which they called generics back then, started to hit the shelves, and they've evolved over time. So I would say first and foremost is a lower price point, a better value proposition. From the retailer's perspective, they make more margin. But because private brands are 20 to 30% cheaper or lower in price than the major brands, they have to make up that margin gap in volume. So there's that saying, a fast nickel beats a slow dime every time. Private brands offers a better value proposition and more profit to the retailer. Loyalty and stickiness is another reason why retailers are really investing in their private brands. You can't buy great value brand in any other franchise other than the Walmart franchise. And that's what I tell my students. They always ask me, what's your favorite private brand? And my favorite private brand product is Trader Joe's hot sauce. And I go to Trader Joe's just for their hot sauce. So you could say that some of the brands or products that retailers make do create that stickiness and loyalty to get consumers or shoppers into their store. Of course, now with the pandemic, that hot sauce is out of stock, so I've been boycotting my local Trader Joe's. Fourth reason would be leverage against the big brands. So you big brand guys, I say we because I've spent so much time in private brands, keep you honest by having our private brand portfolio. And if a big CPG tries to take a price increase or offer some terms that aren't necessarily favorable for the retailer, they can use their private brands as leverage. So those would be the first four reasons I would say why a retailer launches private brands or private label. From a consumer's perspective, the benefits are the same. They get better value. They can spread their food dollar farther. And then nowadays, since retailers have invested in their private labels and launched brands, the consumer can get more unique, special products that only a retailer can offer. And that's another reason that will allow the customer, keep the customer in the franchise. So I would say those are the big reasons, Peter.
First of all, welcome to the show. We are excited that we can actually have you here, Dan. So let's say a retailer has decided to create a private label in a certain category, right? What is the actual responsibility of the retailer in developing and then marketing that particular SKU, brand, product? And then why is it that they often go to consultants like you did with your formal employer to support these responsibilities to bring it out in the marketplace?
First part of your question, the retailer is 100% accountable for their private label brands. Many retailers call their private label programs, and I use those words interchangeably these days, as own brands. They refer to them as our own brands, and they have 100% responsibility for the development of those products. They own them, they're theirs, they're connected to the banner of the retailer. One bad product experience for a customer can turn them off from the entire portfolio of products and even the stores or the online shop or the digital shelf in an omni-channel world, the shopping experience. There's many reasons why a retailer might use a company like Damon Worldwide. And since I was there for 14 years, I'll speak specifically about Damon, but there are other consultants that do similar functions. Reason number one is the Damons of the world can bring a level of expertise that many retailers don't have with their own people, or they haven't invested in, or they haven't taken their private brand portfolio or the private brand products as serious enough and invested the right infrastructure and assets. And that could be people, technology, marketing, awareness. So Damon, a company like Damon, brings that expertise to a retailer. And when I was at Damon, and I'm sure it's still the same, a dollar investment in a Damon Worldwide delivers 3x, 4x times the value, largely because they have the best people in private brands, and I believe they still do. They have a global perspective. They work with companies all over the world, and they can bring those insights to the local retailer, and they offset some of the costs. So that'd be reason number one, is just the ability to bring more resources to work on private brands. Two is the financial model. Damon Worldwide and many of the other competitors are a brokerage model. So their cost is paid on commissions, usually by the manufacturer community, so that cost offset can be aggregated by a company like Damon. And that way, a retailer doesn't have to invest their own, call it cash, right away into the business, so they can offset their cost that way. And then the third reason would be scale. Damon can bring them scale from sourcing from their relationships or buying or marketing expertise and technology and things like that. So I would say those are the three big reasons why a company like Damon would be utilized by a retailer. And Damon has great people. That's the bottom line. They have great people, and great people bring great value.
Thank you for that, Dan. So when I think about national brands and what they do to support their business with their customers, they bring a tremendous amount of analytic and field resources that support all of their retail customers, from category management to shopper insights to new product cut-ins and shelf resets. There's a lot that's going on there. So my question becomes, how do retailers ensure that their private label priorities are identified and addressed when their suppliers are often almost managing much of the category strategy as being outsourced? And particularly, what about private labeling? There are a lot of categories where private label is far and away the largest player. It's a highly commoditized category. What is it that private label can do, to a retailer can do, to ensure that their private label priorities and strategies are addressed when it's really national brands that are driving a lot of the engagement?
I think first is aligning performance metrics to objectives. And speaking about a specific category, if category manager of a category is charged with owning their own brands and rewarded for driving or increasing the penetration or share of their own brand products for strategic reasons, I think that's one way that retailers can ensure that private brands get the necessary support that they need. You take a look at some of the retailers that are investing in loyalty data and technology. They can put their private brands in the middle of that when it comes to marketing, merchandising, whether that's online or in the store. It's one giant shelf or digital shelf, and they need to allocate private label their fair share, because the big brands, the CPG guys with the big wallets, are going to buy share. They're going to buy ads. They're going to buy space. And so that's another way, by forcing their teams to allocate the right amount of space and time and mind share to private label or private brands. When I was at Jet, before Walmart acquired us, we actually had to force the algorithms to serve up private brands. When consumers would go through search, because we know search is so important, we actually forced the algorithms or the equations to serve up private brand products for a couple of reasons. One, we wanted to build those brands. We wanted to create loyalty and stickiness. And two, they were much more profitable than the corresponding brands were selling. And that equation made a whole lot of sense from a loyalty and financial reasons. So those are some of the ways. I think it's just giving them the right mind share, ensuring that performance metrics are tied to whatever private label objectives are, make sure the private brand objectives are part of that. And then focus. I mean, you guys are great at this. You have your CPG guys swag on all the time. I wish I had some. I'd be wearing it now. Fetch Reward swag. If you put your employees, your brands on their shirts and their hats and what they talk about in their stores, you now have hundreds of thousands of sales associates really pushing for brands, your own brands. So I think that's another great way. Awareness.
Peter, are you familiar with somebody who actually needs some swag from the CPG guys?
I know a guy. I know someone who can
You know a
send
guy.
CPG guy. I got a guy. I got a guy.
I know a guy who knows a guy, but in
You
any...
got a guy who got another guy?
Yeah, thank you, Dan, for confirming what we always suspected here, which is, the algorithms do indeed take into account the margins, etc., and serve up private label when it comes to SEM and search, SEO more likely than anything else. So I want to kind of bring us back to what we've been dealing with for the last 24 odd months. It may feel like days we're emerging from the supply chain crisis, but it's a hit or miss depending on the category you do business in and the commodities you have access to, not to mention transportation and labor in the supply chain world. But that, coupled with the resulting inflation that you've already kind of hit up here, led to an increase in trial and repeat for private label sales. Do you think this is actually going to sustain once we see a deflationary period overall? And is there a longer term impact that this is actually now showing up in the marketplace?
So quick answer is absolutely yes. Pandemic caused or created trial, right? The only thing that I could buy on the shelf at some point during the pandemic was private brands or the private label that were left because the national brands had sold out so quickly. So consumers tried it. They liked it. They realized they can save money. The product quality in most cases is outstanding, equal to or better than many of the national brands that private brands competes with. And consumers are happy. I think I heard this on this podcast called CPG Guys once. Ask your peeps what they want, deliver that, and the rest will go from there. So if you ask consumers what they want good quality products at a fair, reasonable price. They want to be delighted through unique products. And if you deliver that, you're going to have happy peeps, and the peeps are going to continue to buy that product that you put on the shelf. So I think that's really the equation for private brands. And yes, the pandemic accelerated it and enabled more trial or forced more trial, but people are happy. Private label today is not the private brands of, our generation. It's much better in quality. It's there's lots of unique special items. It's a reason to shop it or go to some stores, is the great private brand products that they have in stores. So I anticipate long-term, if you turn to Europe, some of the shares over there, 40, 50%. Some of the best retailers here in the States, one right up in Rochester, one down in San Antonio, one in Florida, some out west, one based in Seattle that sells a lot of big stuff. They have high shares and they have a lot of runway and room to grow. And, if retailers are being squeezed with inflation and high prices and their costs coming up, private brands offers them more margin contribution too. So I don't see the momentum slowing down at all. Unless you big CPG guys continue to promote aggressively, because that's a good way to combat against the growth there, because we are emotional buyers. People are emotional buyers, and sometimes the dupe, the private brand dupe, isn't as good as the national brand, at least in our heads and hearts.
Hey, listen, I can tell you of countless people who, during the onset of the pandemic, raced to the store specifically to get their Oreos, because that is the comfortest of most comfort foods. Shout out to our good friend Francesca Hahn, who was on the podcast recently. She's from Mondelez. We're big fans of Oreos. We love your custom Oreos that we can imprint CPG Guys logos on the top of. We love that, don't we, Sri? I want to remind our audience that we're speaking with Dan Hooker. He is both a private label brand industry expert and a member of the faculty at the Cornell University Johnson Graduate School of Management. So we've been talking about private label. Let's flip the script and start talking about Dan's other area of expertise. Dan, 3 years ago, you joined the faculty of Cornell University Johnson Graduate School of Management, which was a big change for you. You kind of referenced this in your intro, but what's the driving force behind you creating particularly these educational programs in partnership with your clients? What is your role to make that happen, and how do you do that?
Yeah, but let me just expand a little bit on what I do here. And when I got here in 2019, it was trial by fire, and so much as the pandemic happened, and here I am with a mask and glasses all fogged up, trying to learn a new thing, i.e. educating undergraduate students who have a attention span of about 8 seconds. So it became an exercise in edutainment. So I learned, I don't know, not the normal path on how to really meet that audience. And I have this thing it's called rapid fire education, where I just hit them with stuff as fast as I can to try and teach them something. But I teach this class called the dynamics of the food industry and CPG. And then, like I said earlier, supply chain strategy. I'll talk a little bit about what we do here, at least in the department that I work in at Cornell. There's 3 things that we focus on, and that's education, research, and then engagement. And Peter, to your question, that third area is engagement. And other half of my role is to manage our programs and also create new programs. And what does it mean to manage programs? We create custom learning and development programs on a variety of topics, from insights, analytics, leadership, D&I, sustainability, you name it. Being at Cornell offers us a whole lot of expertise in a lot of areas that we can create custom learning and development programs for corporate partners or companies or institutions. I specifically run a handful of those programs. Like I said earlier, we have our food executive program that's been running 56 years. I run a program with the National Grocers Associations, the Independents, the National Association of Convenience Stores, International Fresh Produce Association, and then lots of different programs that we customize for big CPGs or retailers. This program, Peter, that we met, the omnichannel program, it came together in a fairly unique way. Since we've done these programs for so long, some of those partners, one in particular, Ahold USA, reached out to us and said, "Hey, Dan, are you guys developing any programs in omnichannel?" For obvious reasons, it's a topic that everyone is concerned about, and getting it right, doing it right, is very important to retailers, CPG, not just food retail. And so we looked around and we didn't have any options here at Cornell, nor could we find very many out in the market. So we decided to partner together and create one. And that's how omnichannel came about. The program wasn't a Cornell program that we pushed out into the market and expected people to come, but it was created in partnership with industry. And that's how I like to do this. Find a great partner or partners, put together a program that's a blend of academia and a blend of industry expertise. You bring those two together, and it creates what I think is a winning formula for lots of different values that can come out of that. So that's how it came together, Peter and Shri. And I was lucky that we were lucky here at Cornell that our brand also attracts some great partners. There's lots of great Cornell alumni out there in the world that want to work with their old faculty as well.
Apparently now I am an alum of Cornell, but I can't prove it, Dan, because the certificate still hasn't been mailed to me. This is greatly concerning. We'll follow up after the podcast about that. But, I believe until it's hanging on the wall, it's not true. But I'm just, we'll deal with that later. Shri, what do you got?
Thanks for sharing how, the course came to be in the first place, right? And the fact that it was Ahold who got this whole thing going for you. Of course, it's fairly evolved at this stage. But I'd love to learn from you, Dan, what are parts of the actual course curriculum now that we've addressed how it actually came together, like in a 3-day session or however long it is. First of all, can you share with the audience how long the session is intended to be, and then who's the intended audience, and then what do you actually communicate in those sessions?
Good question. And drilling down on omnichannel, what we did last year is it was a program that took place over an entire week. We had a day dedicated to the customer journey. We had a day dedicated to fulfillment or distribution. We had a day dedicated to operations and execution and technology. And then the final day was really focused on leadership. So the idea in this program was targeted towards senior executives. And I know companies' titles vary quite widely, but call it director, senior director, VP level, people that led organizations around omnichannel. And we created this, what we call red thread matrix. So we have these days like the customer journey, and then going across each of the segments or each of the pillars would be things like technology and people, because you can't run your business without investing in the right people to do the job or technology to help support it. So that was the structure of the program. And we had structured the program to be faculty partnered with industry experts, and they led the sessions together. So the customer journey was a partnership with a faculty named Helen Chun and PepsiCo. And together they talked about how PepsiCo brought a new product to market. And then so we have an academic perspective on the customer journey, and then an industry perspective on actually what happened or what's happening in the real world. And I believe that that creates a tremendous amount of value in so much as you have the academic perspective really prompting deep learning and asking questions and generating conversation. And then you have real world examples of whatever specific topic we're talking about. And that enables also to the entire participant base to weigh in and learn from each other too. So I think that might give you a high level of it. It was 5 days. We had great opportunities to network, during the program. And I like to say this, it's very, very different than a trade show. Trade shows, you have quick meetings and someone's always trying to sell you something that blah, 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 you want to listen to throughout the day. But in these types of programs, we focus on deep learning and then networking. And so the combination of both, I think, is a pretty powerful way for people to really connect together on a common area, and then also learn and take away things that they can apply to their company or their jobs right away. So I think that's the formula, at least for the programs that I'm developing, works pretty well.
Yeah, quick shout out to Elena Parlator from PepsiCo, who was presenting a new product innovation launch that they did. She did a great job. And Elena, if you're listening, we talked about you coming on the podcast. Love to have you on. Think it's a great story that you can tell. So give me a shout. We'll get you on the podcast.
She did a great job. We could list all the other participants. Whitney, your good friend Whitney Cooper was there. We had Dick's Sporting Goods there too. And what I thought was great about this program was we had non-food retailers mixed with food retailers, and they have a different perspective. And their, fashion and sporting goods and electronics are ahead of the food industry when it comes to omnichannel. And so what great opportunity to learn from each other by having different industries there together.
If I told you guys Elena Parlator was part of actually educating me on the 101 of e-commerce and convincing me that I should actually put my feet in the digital space from the dollar drug convenience channel I was at Frito, would you believe me? She was actually building a digital asset management system for Quaker back in 2010, 11, when we first interacted.
Wow, she's a great leader.
It's amazing what a small world we all operate in. That's really, really interesting. So I can tell you that I love the program. It was tremendously valuable, though I think, Dan, you could have completed the program in 3.5 days if I hadn't been talking so much, but that's just another story. So that's great about the design. I want to focus really on what are the outcomes your participants are hoping for and your business partners are expecting from these programs that you produce? What are they, from your perspective, do you have any general observations about, are they looking for them to be educated in a specific function, or is it about mentally tackling issues by thinking about different ways to approach this? I certainly learned an enormous amount about omnichannel from an area that I never touched, which is supply chain and operation. So I'd love to hear your thought on what is it you think they're trying to have your programs deliver as outcomes.
So I'll give you a few examples that might help illustrate some of the outcomes. So just knowledge and learning. Karan Garotra talked about A/B testing and failing fast, and the fact that that's important in a learning agile environment. And some of the partners there are now working with Quran on how to test faster and learn new ideas faster and quickly. So companies that participated in the program were able to take away new insights and learnings from whether that's from the faculty or different participants and utilize that right away. So our faculty have engaged in probably half a dozen different projects with some of the participants in the program. Another value would be just the internal network and idea share that happened at the program. Another example, Parag Shah, you know Parag from the Giant Company. You got to get him on the podcast. He's
in breaking news. Parag Shah is actually coming on the podcast in the next 4 weeks.
Oh, wow. He's phenomenal. And that's great news that you're having him on. And what a smart guy, making a lot of changes in a changing environment. But takeaway from Prague is some of the learnings he got from Dick's Sporting Goods in the way that they challenged or taken on some of their omni-channel challenges. I think he's connecting with them and learning together. Clarence Lee, another faculty, is now a partner in helping in a technology company that Prague is partnering up on to do some new things at the Giant Company. So there's some great connections that happen there. So that'd be learning number 2. And 3, I think, would be sort of the big picture that participants got. So, and I'm throwing names out because these people were attending the program, but Don Germano, I know, Peter, I don't know if you remember the section of Don Germano, he's the EVP stores at Dick's Sporting Goods. And he got up there and he talked about the importance of people and being empathetic to your people. And people have goals and concerns. And when the pandemic hit, they actually were forced to shut their stores because they were deemed non-essential. And I think they went through a period of furloughs, but they had to quickly get their people motivated and retain them. And they put together an e-commerce strategy, curbside pickup, in a matter of days. And they ended up creating this organizational culture it's really helped them thrive in the world in the last couple of years, and their results are proving it. So I think those are 3 big things that the participants will take away from the program. I mean, to summarize, deep learning, networking, connection, and the big picture of omni-channel, not just about the technical areas, but also organization and people.
You know what I love, Sri, about what Dan just said and everything he said? He's become a consummate academic. He answers the question and then leaves you with the summary bullet points for everything he tells you what he's going to tell you.
Summary coming right up here.
I know, but I got to tell you, before I let Sri ask the last question, I want to say something about Don Germano. That was probably one of the most moving presentations and conversations that we had, because what he talked about was the fact that they had to let go a lot of their associates, and it was very emotionally trying on them. And their managers had to adopt a new philosophy about, for the people that they were able to keep, keeping them motivated, to your point, and being emotionally connected. And they did so very deliberately. And as a result of that, what ended up happening was a lot of their associates started to move beyond just this is a boss-manager relationship to we're part of a family. And as a result of that, their store became almost the safest place in the lives of many of these people. And suddenly, store managers had to call headquarters and say, I'm starting to deal with personal issues that people are coming to me with. I'm not trained to do this. And they had to take on a whole new responsibility of just addressing the EQ issue of leadership rather than just operational issues. It was phenomenal. I will say one other thing about having to be nimble, because that's another example you used. I remember hearing a story from, I think it's Julie Ream, who is the head of marketing at Party City. She said when the pandemic hit, they had to quickly adopt, to your point, in a couple of days, what's my e-commerce strategy? They quickly figured out that all these rental car companies that had these cars sitting in airports that weren't being taken, they could just go and rent those cars and start their own delivery service as a result of that. That is called innovation. So hearing stories like that at this program, from my perspective, wonderfully valuable. So I'll just pass it to Sri for our last question.
I'll tell you, Peter and Dan, the number of innovative new ideas, the number of new businesses that were stood up during COVID is just sometimes it's just mind-boggling, right? I might know of another one, a podcast that actually was stood up right at the heart of COVID in May 2020. I wonder who that is. But Dan, I'd love for you to bring this all together for us. And where I want to go in this last question for today, of course, for this episode is little future forward. And that is, when you get students that come to these courses, they're also your consumers. They're in the marketplace every day. They could be retailers, they could be service providers, they could be brands, fairly senior people making decisions on a daily basis. What do you find as future forward from them, as in what is their most asked for areas of learning from you? And what are they looking to pursue next after they go to this program?
It's a hard one to answer because it's such a broad group of topics. We get questions on ESG and food waste and supply chain execution and really advanced things like artificial intelligence and machine learning and all kinds of different topics. A lot of them will revolve around or come back to leadership. And I think that the people that go through most of our programs want to understand what's happening, but figure out how to talk to their peers and the people that work with and for them and be leaders. And so, we get into technical and we're not going to be able to teach loyalty like Peter can, but we can talk about leadership and we can generate conversations and ask the hard questions to get people to talking about the issues. I'm not sure I'm answering your question directly, but it's a pretty broad pool. A lot of it comes back to just leadership and really more of a framework on how to think, how to take on a problem, how to analyze a business, and then make decision and execute against it. So I think that's what a lot of people are looking to do. Like in the example of Dick's Sporting Goods, they seem to latch on to Karan when he talked about product testing and failing fast. And maybe they do something with that too. So that's how I'd answer that question.
To our audience, if you want to learn more about things Dan talked about and so much more about our industry, it's all free. Just go to cpgguys.com and you can find a lot of content and some great thought leadership from great industry luminaries. And of course, if you think you or your company has some thought leadership to contribute to the conversation, drop us an email, contact@cpgguys.com, and maybe you can join us for a future episode of the podcast. And while you're at cpgguys.com, don't forget, top of the navigation bar, click on reviews. Leave us a rating and a review. Tell us what you think. We want your feedback. We want to be a podcast that's responsive to our now, ready for this, Sri, 15,000 followers on LinkedIn. Wow, that is pretty big. I'm pretty sure Dan's one of them. So, Dan, want to thank you so much for joining us today. It was a wonderful bifurcated conversation. It was like, Harvey Dent and Batman, Two-Face. It was private label on this side, and then not you. Your face is beautiful, but you know what I mean. We did both sides of the coin here, right? Private label and then academic. So love that we had you on the podcast today. Thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome. I have a face for radio, so I appreciate a good podcast.
Oh, I know all about that. Shree's always reminding me I have a face built for podcasting. I'm the man with the golden voice. That's about it. But Dan, rest assured, CPG Guy swag is going to come your way. So don't worry about that. So Shree, oh my goodness, I'm just tickled pink and delighted over our entire conversation today. I would love your thoughts around what Dan shared with us.
So first of all, Dan, I want to thank you for joining us on this episode of the CPG Guys. We'd love to have you back. Maybe we can do a lot of knowledge dropping and knowledge nuggets on the different vehicles of the CPG Guys, our social media folks. For those of you listening to this episode, we also have our TikTok page is up and running now. You all told us we had to have one. A majority of you did, not all of you, but a majority of you, and we actually have a TikTok page. I'm still amazed sometimes at this ripe old age. Peter and I have figured out the algorithms of TikTok and Reels and stories on Instagram. Yes, Not only do we have posts, we have reels and stories on Instagrams almost every single day. So do check them out. Let them know how we're doing, and maybe we can have Dan also feature on some of those in the future. But Peter, we started right up top with private label and its importance in today's era, right? Seems like it's still about price and value for the consumer and margin for the retailers, which of course creates pressure on volume for retailers to ensure that they can deliver. But what a perfect storm in the middle of inflation, in the middle of a supply chain crisis, to have access to your own stock and see the end-to-end of supply chain, which ultimately creates leverage when it comes to the shelf and space on the shelf. And then I think another thing Dan mentioned that I thought was actually something to reflect on deeper for brands is, those listening in from brands, is the quality of private label today is actually significantly enhanced versus what my generation, Peter, your generation, our generation experienced over the course of time. And that's what happens is once it's in trial, it actually becomes sticky. And, to make sure that the brand is actually good quality and is sticky, the end-to-end ownership, which Dan stressed on, of ensuring that you can get the right private label product, is still owned very much by retail. Then we talked a little bit about why brokers, and the biggest takeaway I had on that is the scale of the broker in touching many brands and knowing many brands and bringing unique knowledge of how to market a brand, what the right display would be, perhaps even where in the store the right fit is, and not the natural category where something may actually belong. Then we jumped over to the omni-channel world and started talking about search and how private labels get advantaged in the search algorithms, the SEO portion of the sales search algorithms, which we kind of were able to confirm here with Dan that at some point at least that was true. And then the stickiness, we did debate the stickiness in trial and repeat, leading to our questions more about the omni-channel program that Dan has led now and actually brought to bear for Cornell, for industry luminaries and industry senior executives. He gave some of the takeaways, one of the big ones being, of course, the networking that you can get. Nothing can replace networking, folks. Peter and I tell you that all the time ourselves here on the CPG Guys. You refer to Parag, from a good friend of the show, Parag from Ahold, who will be on this show sometime in late September or early October. You talked about Don, was it Gennaro from Dick's Sporting Goods, and the empathy aspect of running retail in a business, which is so important and oft forgotten over the last few decades. But what a great life reset we've all had. And then, of course, my good friend who got me introduced into the world of digital with the digital asset management system, Elena Parlatore, in the class she gave. Folks, this is a power-packed episode. You're going to see it in many parts, not just the episode you're listening to. You can go back and listen to a bunch of nuggets that's going to exist across all our social media vehicles. Do check it out. Dan, I can't thank you enough for coming here and sharing all of that with us.
You're welcome, Sri. I appreciate the time.
All right, everyone. Well, thank you, Sri. Thank you, Dan. And to our audience, we greatly appreciate you following us. 15,000 of you on LinkedIn. We are so humbled and so honored that you trust us to bring thoughtful content and a little bit of entertainment to this podcast in your life. We look forward to speaking with you on the next episode of the CPG Guys podcast. Goodbye. The content in this podcast episode is provided for general informational purposes only. By listening to our episode, you understand that no information contained in this episode should be construed as advice from CPG Guys LLC or the individual author, hosts, or guests, nor is it intended to be a substitute for research on any subject matter. Reference to any specific product or entity does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by CPG Guys LLC. The views expressed by guests are their own, and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. The views expressed by CPG Guys LLC do not represent the views of their employers or the entity they represent. CPG Guys LLC expressly disclaims any and all liability or responsibility for any direct, indirect, incidental, special, consequential, or other damages arising out of any individual's use of, reference to, or inability to use this podcast or the information we present in this podcast.